Hello and welcome to the show. My name's Relvin. This is Do All the Things. On today's episode, we continue with the Sun Sorado. We're going to put a substitution tube in it. Substitution tube? Is that the correct term? I don't know. Stay tuned to find out. So on a previous episode in this amp, we completely rebuilt the power supply with better filtration, with better D-rate, and we even have voltage regulation for the screen grids to kind of make these KT88s run the way other big bass head manufacturers do. And of course, we've replaced the transformer. It's a Trainer Voicemaster transformer, but hey, better than a blown transformer, and a lot cheaper too, since it was a spare part that I had. Now, while you weren't paying attention, I did some finishing touches. You know, it's hard to see, baby, but you know, I hot snotted the capacitors so that they stay still. You know, this one here is a little weird, still a little floaty, but you know, at least it's not load bearing just on its little connectors now. I also did a little bit of the zap strap action just to do some cable management, get these things secured the way they should be. But today, it's all about this tube right here. The original tube in the second position of the preamp is a 6A-N-8. It's stated to be a medium moo triode with a sharp cutoff pentode, and it is used in trickery in this amp so that they could avoid using as many gain stages as other amp manufacturers might use to get something like this working. You know, normally you got 1 gain stage, 2 gain stage, then you'd have 3 gain stage, 4 gain stage, I guess, or at least a third one, and then, you know, a long tail phase inverter. This guy has 1 gain stage, 2 gain stage, 1 big high output pentode gain stage, and then a short tail phase inverter. Trickery that could be done back in these days when you had a variety of tubes to work with. Now, it's a problem. Surely, you can go on eBay's, buy any number of NOS tubes that are tested strong, but really they're not NOS tubes, they're used tubes, and who knows if they're microphonic, they could be good, they could be bad. From my local supplier, they are available for $35.99. Well, I guess that's not much more than a good preamp tube, but really, no pictures, and it says assorted brands in stock, which is the problem that I don't like. The fact that they're that price means the stock is probably low and they're high demand, and the fact that there's no picture and it's assorted brands. Maybe I like a tube I get. Maybe I want to reorder that same tube. Maybe I don't like a tube I get. I want to make sure I don't get the same tube. Repeatability is an important facet of tone. Now, right now, I've gone and rewired this socket to take a 12AX7, and it does work because, you know, a gain stage is a gain stage. You just might not get the same amount of gain. Now, if we look at the stock here, 1, 2, 3 on this triode is exactly like the 12AX7, so that was pretty much a drop in fit. I had to move 1 heater connection, and then 6, 8, and 9 would have been the respective connections on this. So I had to move that, not 6, but 8 had to be moved to 7, and 9 had to be moved to 8. 7 here is originally the screen grid for this pentode. So it was actually relatively easy retrofit, and it does work and work well, but I don't know if it's loud enough. Maybe it is. Maybe I'm gonna put the correct kind of tube back in here and I'm not gonna get any more performance. But I feel like this stage needs this gain in order to get this thing to the volume levels that it's supposed to be. So to remedy this situation, I have got myself a more available tube. One that I could find with relatively similar ratings, just a different printout. As close to the ratings as I could find is this guy, Jan Phillips 6U8A. And I have heard of this being used as an amplifier tube before. Whether or not it's going to be a good idea or not, I don't know. Either way, we can get brand spanking new fresh ones, and they're only $12. And there's a picture of them, which means if I like this tube, I can reorder it. I can reorder it again. For the price of 1 6AN8, I could buy like 3 of these guys, and then I've got years of playing on this amp that I don't have to worry about. Anyway, let's tear into this guy. Now, if we compare these tubes, we got the 6AN8 and the 6U8A, and we're gonna look at their specifications. We're gonna see some differences in the capacitances here, but they're all in the relatively low UUFs, microfarads. How that's gonna affect our audio quality, I don't know. 6.3 volt heaters, 450 milliamps for the 6AN8. That's identical for the 6U8A. Maximum ratings. 330 volts, 330 volts, 330 volts, 330 volts. That's good. Dissipation of the 6AN8, the pentode section, 2.3 watts. The 6U8A, 3 watts. So that pentode is stronger on that tube. Maybe that's more gain. But that's, I don't know, the difference between 3 watts and 2.3 watts. The triode's interesting. 2.5 watts for the 6U8, 2.8 watts for the 6AN8. So it has a stronger triode. Wattage wise though, however, because if we look at the amplification factor in the 6AN8, it's 21 for that triode. That's equivalent to a 12AU7. Whereas in the 6U8A, we get an amplification factor, where is it? Of 40. That's double. More of a 12AT7, 12AY7, somewhere in there if I remember off the top of my head. So I feel like the triode section is going to function almost identically. They have different plate resistances, which kind of gives you an idea of the amount of gain you're going to get. Sure enough, the triode on the U is 5500. The triode on the AN is 4700. Pentode section, 200,000 versus 170,000 on the AN. Pretty close though. What about the transconductance? I hear about that all the time. I wish I knew more about tubes than I already know. So I knew what that actually means. Microohms? Is that a misspelling? Mahos? 75,000. Oh, 78,000. That's pretty close. Pentode, 5,000. 45,000 for the AN8. So the AU8 has all slightly higher, maybe better ratings. I don't know. Either way, I feel like it's close enough that we can YOLO bomb it in there and we're gonna get results. Whether or not it's the ideal results the designers intended, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the AN8 was just cheaper and more accessible. And they could have used a U8 if they wanted to. But we gotta start pulling this apart. It's time for surgery. We're gonna have to open this here, get the schematic on this side. No, we'll reverse it. All right, so unfortunately, our triode section's not particularly ergonomic. Pin 1 is the only one that stays the same. Okay, cool. But what was normally on pin 2 here has to move over to pin 9. We should probably just start by pulling this all apart. Hate it when the wires don't come out nice and you just end up melting the insulation. It's gonna be hard to get at some of these because like you gotta kinda thread the needle here. What's this guy coming down to pin 3? Oh, that's the base of the triode. Fortunately, because these guys didn't wrap any of the wires around the contact points, just kind of shoved it through the hole and soldered in place, it comes apart pretty easily. So our first connection here, this guy comes in pin 6, and that is power supply, 470K, no, 270K, goes to pin 6. That actually stays on pin 6. That's something that's the same. Pin 1 and 6 are identical, so we can leave that in there. But that's a crossbar, kind of like a cathode follower. It's gonna have to go over to pin 2 now, but is actually pin 9. Anything else connect to pin 9? Yes, that little tiny, oh, we don't have that yet. Okay, let's not solder pin 9. Oh, I'm getting confused. Yeah, just a little 12 PF capacitor. Oh, that's not too out of the way. This little guy can come down here and then just pop through this hole. Now, sometimes you want to bend components like this little capacitor to be more pretty, but you got to worry about diminishing gains here because, like, at some point you stress out the leads and you risk damaging it. So I think that, like that, is going to be good enough. That heater wire looks like ass now. Fortunately for us, the heater connections are pretty much identical based on a certain standard, 4 and 5. All right, what's next here? Let's go on to pin 2. Pin 2 is the input of the triode, which would normally be pin 8. So that's this yellow wire, but pin 2 is over on the other side. It'll reach. There's also this 1 meg resistor, but I do believe this purple wire, the 1 meg is supposed to span, and I think this purple wire goes to pin 2. And the 1 meg and the yellow wire used to converge at this point. That's what my gut and memory's telling me. So if we bring this purple wire over to pin 2, we might have a more ergonomic arrangement. Hopefully we don't need this purple wire for anything else. Now this 1 meg's too short. Gonna have to replace with a longer one. Is this guy long enough? Nope. Here's one that should do. Oh yeah, that looks nice. Maybe we should connect this last so that we have room to work. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Kind of jam this 1 meg in here so I know it's intended to be a ground point. We'll get our yellow wire ready here though. So what goes on pin 3 now? Pin 3 is the screen grid, which has a 1.5 and a 1 UF. That's something else that's going to stretch there. I'm going to do that later. Pin 7. Pin 7 is the cathode of the pentode, which is the 680. That guy right there. And also needs to have, oh, I think that's what the purple wire was for. So what used to connect to that cathode is not going to reach anymore. So we need to get rid of that, replace with something longer. We're gonna need some fresh wire, bud. Yeah, I see what's going on here. Something real easy. That's the cathode of the triode, which is now pin 8 over there. Oh boy. Oh, it reaches relatively ergonomically so. So these last 2 pin connections, I'm really hemming and hawing over how to do them. Okay, so I'm not gonna connect that yet because I gotta get capacitor, and I haven't quite figured out how I want to connect that capacitor yet. Okay, so we have a screen grid coming in now, 1.5 meg, which I don't have, and I'm not sure where I put the original components I pulled out of this. So, you know, 1 meg and a 470K in series we'll have to do. Should do, no problem. Don't see why not. And that's gonna be our screen grid connection right here. And, oh, we need power off this guy. Wrap that around, it's gonna be hard to get off again. Now, from this screen grid connection, it goes to pin 7, we need 0.1 UF capacitor connecting to the cathode, which is pin 7 right there. But we still have this 1 meg coming in here. So exactly where we're gonna put that capacitor, I gotta go find a capacitor first. Doesn't look that hard though. It looks like we can just kind of get one down in there. And that'll be like our last connection that we have to make, I think. Wondering if I can use one of these vintage 200 volts here. Oh, we got a nice one-off 400 volt square. I want to use a fresh one. It's a bit big. It would jump like all the way from there to there, but that would kind of be weird. Or ideal. Damaged Solon fast cap. Yeah, I'm going to be nice. I'm going to put in a fresh capacitor. Might as well. Let's get this 1 meg in place. All right, that should be it. It should be ready to take a 6U8A now. I'm just gonna take a moment to stare at this for a little bit, double check my connections, make sure I did nothing wrong. All right, and here we go. We will insert the 6AU8. No, the 6U8A. AU8, U8A. There probably is an AU8. We're gonna put that in the preamp tank. Okay, now we will turn it on. No explosions. We got heaters. Sure, why wouldn't we? It's the easiest thing to get right. There's something out of the speakers. Plug in some input. Oh, something changed here. Uh-oh. Maybe something's not playing nice. Maybe I should triple check my connections. We got sound. Maybe our layout's not ideal and we're getting a little bit of feedback there. We're getting some oscillation. That's no good. That's hilarious. Okay, well, let's go take a look inside here and see if we can't track that down. I'm not sure if I'll call it louder than I was getting with the 12AX7. Maybe the 12AX7's not a bad deal. Definitely a little bit more drive when I cranked it all the way up. Probably distorting that phase inverter pretty good. But I think we were getting about as much output as we were before. So the treble hooks up here. And it's really close to the screen grid. Oh, the speed of that oscillation changed as I moved the wire. Oh yeah, look at that. It seems to be directly proportional to my bass and treble settings, which, you know, are hooked up to the input. And then if I move this resistor here up and down, well, that's not good. Oscillation. Now I wanted to confirm some voltages while I'm in here. At the bottom of that 270, 88 volts, supposed to be 70. Oh. Well, what are we getting on that screen grid anyway? 29 volts. Oh, touch it. Certain things, if you touch them, not that one. If I touch this one, it goes quiet. I got some thinking to do. All right, call me Mr. Fluke, but I fixed it. The amp's on right now. It's not oscillating. I can tweak on these knobs. We hear sound if I crank it up. It's working properly for the most part, but I noticed something. Where's my stick? So when I touched my multimeter to this point right here, which is this point right here, at the top of the tube, bottom of here, power rail. Not only did the oscillation go away, but so did some background hum. The amp went completely frickin' silent. So I know that a multimeter is going to incur some amount of impedance on a circuit you connect it to. Very little, so low it's pretty much transparent. You never hear the changes as you touch it to things in an amp normally, but to have it like completely cancel out a whole bunch of problems all at once, wow. So what I did was I grabbed this tiny little 10-piece ceramic capacitor, connected it from there to ground, and sure enough, it worked. So then I'm looking at this 12 PF that's here, connected from the power rail to that point. I'm like, okay, let's move it to ground. Ground being right here, it didn't work. That's strange. I don't know if that 12P is any good anymore, to be honest. Because like theoretically, this is the same thing as that. So if I disconnect this, oh geez, just having this, oh, there it goes. Right? Now if I connect this to ground, it should do the same thing. No, but then if I take this fresh 10P, so maybe that's like a stabilization capacitor, this guy right here, because that's often what those little snubbers are for. They're to stabilize circuits that might be unstable. Well, okay, heck, here, let's take this 10P and connect it to where the 12P is supposed to be. Oh, look at that. Silence! I think that capacitor's no good, bud. Okay. What happened to that capacitor? I do not know. Little ceramics. It's not very common for them to crap out like that. Okay, well, let's change out that capacitor, and so based on this, I guess there's nothing wrong with me putting a 6U8A in here. The fact of the matter is, part of this design was unstable by nature. That's why they have this 12PF there, and just for some reason, the 12PF that's part of this circuit is no good anymore. Needed replacement. But if it was no good, why did it work fine with the 12AX7? Either way, let's change out that capacitor. It's gonna be tricky because we got this nice big friggin' in the way. Unless is there another way to approach this? That's one of the power rails there. No, it's not the same power rail as this one. No, wait, what is this power rail? Hold on here. That's the phase inverter power rail. Why is the schematic calls for this to be connected from there to there, but it was connected from here to there? Because that's the phase inverter power rail. I don't believe I don't ever recall moving that capacitor. Okay, maybe that's part of our problem. Crossing streams like that damaged that capacitor, but why was it there? It says it's a 1 kilovolt. It's almost exactly identical to this one that I have that I probably got in the 90s. Gotta cram another thing into this busy, maybe this should have jumped over and had 2 banks here. I know there's more room, just move down. All right, let's test for dangerous voltages. We're connecting to a power rail and the amp was recently active. No, 1 volt, she's cold. So we just put this in line with that existing. That's strange, man, that's strange. Okay, that should be a problem solved. Fire it up and see if it still oscillates. No, she's dead quiet here, sir. So either the last time I worked on this amp, I screwed something up moving that capacitor to the wrong rail, or that capacitor's always been on the wrong rail. Maybe I should double check the rest of everything else that's going on in here. Now, there's one last thing to confirm that we've done this all correctly. And that is right now we're running a solid state rectifier adapter. We need to put a tube rectifier in this guy to make sure it's not gonna poof. I do believe spec calls for an 5AR4 or GZ34. I have this old Ruby tube. It's got low hours, but I'm not gonna miss it if it's gone. It's missing its friggin' thing there. Might require rebiasing. Might incur some voltage drop. Oh boy, this guy's in there tight. Yellow jacket. All right, let us get a bead on that Recto tube. Now last time I tried to fire this amp up with a Recto tube, it went poof instantly. You just saw like the silver at the top of the tube turn clear. So far so good. The standby's on. Sometimes that tortures rectifier tubes. Okay, let's turn up the volume, see if we get sound. Oh yeah? Let's see what effect that has on our voltages. What's our new B plus here? Oh, 579. 574. What's our new screen grid now? 336. What's our corrected bias now? 34 milliamps in that tube. 22 on that one. Well, I think we're going to be good for now. Whether or not a 6U8A is a good long-term solution, I don't know. We can always put a 6AN8 back in this thing. Or, you know what? I don't feel like it was any quieter with the 12AX7. I feel like modding this to take a 12AX7 could be a very real solution if you're interested in standardizing this amp. For a second there, I thought I screwed up royally because of that capacitor error, but it turns out we might have had a failed component hooked up incorrectly. But now, effectively, this amp seems like it's working right now. So I'm gonna call this a success. I'm gonna put it back in its head and we're gonna plop it on a set of cabs and see how it sounds. Oh boy, would you look at that, bud? Doesn't that just look cute? It doesn't even fit completely in the frame of the other camera. It's a monolith of power, at least it looks like it. It's not that much power, but it should be some power. This is the first time that chassis has been back in its head cabinet in the 2 years since it came into my shop. And probably first time I gotta pump some bass through it. Now I stacked it on top of my TE cabs because, well, it would probably look more aesthetically pleasing on top of my Ampeg cabs, but my Ampeg cabs are 4 ohms each. That'd be a 2 ohm total load. I'd have to do some trickery with some wiring to get them in series in order to hit that 4 ohm target. Or series, that would actually be an 8 ohm target. Whether or not I'd want to rewire the amp or the cabs, I don't know. It depends on how much I'd use the head. The Trace Elliots are 8 ohms each, so 4 ohms, bam, nails the target. We can crank this popper up. We don't have to worry about our transformer impedances. Well, I guess I should stop babbling and plug in. Ho 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 ho. Oh, that speaker's popping on 3. The low boost adds some definite deeperness to it. The bass just sounds like mid. I don't know how to slap. Sorry, Davey. Oh, look at those speakers pop. That's an 18 too. I love the way 18s sound on bass. Let's bring her up to half volume, 5. Starting to hear a little bit of distortion. Well, 10. So it can maybe stay tight up to 6. After that, it just falls apart. Now, whether or not that's the modifications we've done, because remember, we no longer have our screen taps, which is supposed to clean up the sound. We're using the wrong kind of preamp tube, which might add a bit of drive, but it's working. And I guess the volume output I'm getting is consistent with what I'd expect out of a 50-watt tube head. You know, turning down for just like some, jamming alone at home volume levels, it's got some nice bass tone to it. Clean too. Now the guy who had this amp last, he used to use it as a guitar head. He was in like a doom metal band at the time, stoner, sludge, that kind of stuff. And he would just plug like a rat fuzz pedal into it and dime her out. So, well, keeping with these same cabs, even though they're not applicable, let's just plug a guitar in here. I'm just going to use my Malmsteen overdrive and see what this thing's going to do. It is a tube amp after all. It should take overdrive. It definitely has volume with guitar tones. Bass is harder to amplify. It's the reason why those amplifiers are so friggin' huge. That sound's starting to get a little bit. For the record, that was turned to 5. I don't expect it to get any louder, but let's see how much distortion we can pull out of it. Well, that was certainly an experience, and based on the operation of this amp as described to me, I think it's back to its former glory. Maybe a little dirtier, maybe a little bit more Frankenstein. But she works again. She's not blowing the rectifier tube. I might do a mod where I use the polarity switch to be a dual rectifier. Maybe if I pop that in now, I'll get tighter performance out of the bass. But I don't know. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this. I've been planning this for months, and it's finally done now. If you like this, well, stick around and find out, because there's still more tube amp stuff coming. Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Here, kitty, 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 kitty. Oh, I shouldn't do that. These things were expensive.